Cool. So we are live. We are going. Yes, this is the July 24th Crossplane community meeting. All right. Let me drop a link in the Zoom chat to the agenda doc. So if folks don't have that, you've got access to it and you can start adding suggestions for agenda items and stuff like that. But right now, biggest thing by far is the upcoming V2 release. We are very, very close to the end of this milestone. It's been a journey for sure. We did like our first preview release of Crossplane V2 way back for KubeCon London, like in the end of March of this year. So that was we got really good feedback on that. We had a bunch of rough edges and things that, were incomplete, but like the core of the experience was there and people seemed to like it. So we've been, continuing to progress on that and, polishing and honing on that release. And it will be within a couple of weeks. We expect to have that release completed. So let's talk about V2 and what's going on and everything that's happening there. First thing you may notice is this is one heck of a busy full release. There's like 54 things in the done column already, which is definitely more than we normally do. Got 10 things still in review, 10 things in progress. Like this is a pretty massive release with a ton of things going on. Joe, you have a question in the chat about V2 releases, if they're built nightly on main branch. Yes, they are. They are on every commit to main. You get a build out of it. And let me show you something real quick so that folks can continue to get the latest and stuff. So basically the installation instructions for pre-release versions here. This is it. This is exactly what you need to get like the per commit build from the main branch. And I'll drop that in the chat too, so it's there. Yes. Oop, there we go. Okay, so let's how to break this down. Since there's so much going on. The core functionality is basically all landed. Let's talk about like the next milestone. I think that's probably the most important thing. So what we do with every Crossplane release, not just V2, is that we do a feature freeze, code freeze release process. We typically try to do feature freeze, finish the completion of all major features, API changes, all that sort of stuff. We try to finish that 2 weeks before the release, and then 1 week later, we do we start focusing over the next week on bug fixes and polishing and getting things to as high quality as we can. And then we declare a code freeze. 1 week before the release, we create a release branch. We publish a release candidate build, and then we share that with the community to kind of get help with testing of that release candidate build. Any major issues that come out of that, we will fix, backport, and include in the final release. And then after that process is over, we get the release out and it's done. So right now, where we're at with this process here is that we are just about at feature freeze, but we have not landed feature freeze yet. We have a couple of outstanding PRs that are still left, and they're all around the area of the new feature of managed resource definitions and managed resource activation policies that basically will give you the capability of when you install at providers, like turning on, enabling the CRDs from them that you actually want. So that's been something that's been requested for quite a long time, and we've approached and resolved that through a number of means. One of them is breaking up the large providers into smaller providers. But now with this, you can go even further fine-grained, and say, I only want this particular CRD if you want that. So that'll be very nice. We think it's quite important in a V2 context when we have both cluster scoped and namespace scoped CRDs or managed resources. So that's kind of a critical thing now that we've just further increasing the number of CRDs that Crossplane already, love CRDs. We certainly love that extension point to Kubernetes. And so it'll be important to land this one. So we're holding feature freeze on this. My good friend Scott has been working super hard on this. And then Scott, I haven't been able to check anything yet this morning. Do you have any updates or anything you wanted to discuss on these PRs for that we want to get in for feature fees, my friend?
So I just rebased the 33. So yeah, I just no, I rebased the other one.
This one. Oh yeah, because we landed all the yes. Now it's only 4 commits because we landed all the other ones that it was based on, right? Okay, great.
Yeah, because yeah. Anyway, so the other one is independent, but it depends on these things to be turned on by default. There is one little gotcha where the providers themselves need to support this thing we're calling Safe Start, and it basically means that I landed a feature inside of the Crossplane runtime that gates startups of things that are dependent on other things, and so you can use this new reconciler that watches the existence of CRDs, and if you can claim safe start if you gate yourself on starting a controller for a particular resource, which means that the binary is safe to start even if the kinds don't exist. And then when the kind exists, then the controller will get ungated and start. So this is kind of like the provider side thing that enables us to dynamically turn CRDs on. Doesn't support going the other direction because of insane complexity of removing kinds.
I like the way you phrase that, Scott, and it's 100% correct. Awesome. So you've rebased this one. Sorry, and Scott, was there an order that these should be merged? You said that they're not really dependent on each other, or
No, there's a follow-up to enable the beta feature that is
right.
flagging all this stuff to convert CR. So provider CRDs get converted into MRDs if the provider advertises that it has safe start capabilities. In the other PR, not this one, but the other one, I added, and I'd love some review on, there's a new method called, I don't know, it's like something fuzzy compare or fuzzy,
Fuzzy?
because watching somebody else attempt to use this feature, they struggled to get the casing and the symbols correct in the capability name. And so I was like, well, what if you don't care about those? And so I stripped the I stripped the symbols and I lowercase everything and then compare it. So now you can do camel case or snake case or dash case, safe start, and it'll all just work.
Yeah, dude. I saw that last night when I reviewed this, and that seemed like a how to say user-friendly way to approach this. Is like,
Yeah,
we
it
got
just
your back. You want safe start, we'll give you safe start.
removes one foot gun from users that you have to make
Yep.
sure that, I mean, yeah.
Sounds good to me, my friend. Yeah, I saw that last night. I like it. I like it. And it looks like, yeah, just within the last hour, you've responded to some of the feedback here or the questions. These are mostly questions. I don't think there was anything blocking.
Yeah.
So that looks
I
good
have
to me,
two
Scott.
I have two bigger bug fixes. There's one that I found when when the context deadline expires in Crossplane, we don't get status updates, and I fixed that in a couple places, specifically where it matters. Like if you don't have the correct RBAC settings on the V2 of compositions, you get into this loop where the informers are waiting and it never happens and it expires the context of a reconciliation loop and you never get status update for the XR that you're reconciling. So I have a PR to fix that, but I I have to go check the comments because apparently maybe we'll delete stuff by accident. So we'll see.
Yes. I remember that PR. Yep, absolutely. And and that one may be, yeah, we can align on that one further and discuss because I maybe there's a more scoped way that we can do it to get the feedback, like the improvement to the experience in that helps point people towards, you need to add RBAC for this arbitrary type you're doing. But I'm not sure. And we definitely don't want to have major regressions of either. But yeah, I think that one's, I think you said, Scott, is bug fix, that one's, I'm not blocking feature freeze on that one. So we can land these feature freeze stuff and then we can deal with that over the next week. Bug fix,
Yeah.
bug fix, bug
So as
fix.
far as I know, I mean, these two are ready for review, and I can address things as they come. So
Yeah, because I don't, from my reviews yesterday, all the iteration we've done on them, I don't think, yeah, there's anything blocking left on those two. Those both look great to me. Let's get those merged in today, and then that's cool then. So if we can get as soon as we get those merged in, I think we can declare feature freeze and start polishing and fixing and improving.
And I think
Hey.
that somebody else has done coordination on some of the provider generation things to enable safe start for generated providers. And so then it's just a matter of like, if you want to have a provider that advertises it does this thing, you have to be able to start without the CRD in some method.
Yeah, and I think if let's keep thinking with, is Erhan on the call today? I don't think he is, but let's keep thinking about him to make sure that there's nothing falling in the cracks between what we're doing in core and what he's expecting. It seems like from the coordination we've done so far, there's not anything, I don't see anything falling in the cracks, but let's stay on top of it to make sure we don't lose anything.
Yep.
Cool. And once again, Scott, thanks for all your work on this stuff, man. I was saying that earlier, is that okay, cool, we've got multiple PRs from Scott that we're waiting for feature freeze, and that's not because you're slow, but because you do a lot. You know, that's the reason, dude. So thanks for all the stuff you've done in this this release. Is this your, no, you were around for the 1.20 release too, right, Scott? Is that right?
Barely.
Okay, so this is your first major release, and it's a doozy.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So yes, I will let folks know when we hit feature freeze. Let's get those features merged in, and then we'll start doing bug fix. We will continue working on the board. Where is that? Yes, this board here to get all the bug fixes in as well. A large chunk of stuff right now that you see here is provider stuff, so it's not strictly in core Crossplane or runtime releases, so that makes the board look a little bit better when we get rid of the provider stuff. But we do still have a lot of things going on, and we need to push on you know, A, getting things completed, but B, keeping quality high, because we do not want to take unnecessary risks where we regress functionality. No matter how you look at it, V2 is a massive release with a lot of churn and a lot of changes. So we need to be careful about it, but let's definitely do our best to keep quality high. And then, yep, Monday, August 4th is when we hope to do the release. Nick Cope will be back from his vacation that day, so his first day back will be the release day. We will welcome him with open arms to celebrate and getting that massive release out that day. What else is on people's minds for V2 specifically? Is there any questions, any feature confusion, anything that folks want to know about V2?
I'm curious about the migration. I didn't follow too much, but what's the migration path from V1 to V2?
Yeah, good question, Christian. Let me bring up the docs real quick just to put this on the screen for folks.
I know the initial plan, from what I recall in the design, was to just you know, keep the cluster scoped resources, and that would be the migration basically. But if we don't really want to stay on the cluster scoped, what would be the migration path in that case?
Yeah. So let's do this in two phases then. So the first phase that you're already aware of there is, you know, when you install V2 and you install V2 compatible providers, you know, Crossplane starts knowing about namespace stuff. You can do namespace composition, you can compose arbitrary resources, all that sort of stuff. And then you've got, you know, when you install V2 compatible providers, you've got these new managed resource types that are namespace scoped, but nobody's using them yet, right? Your existing cluster scoped managed resources don't automatically get migrated over there. So there is you know, some effort that will need to be underdone to migrate those resources there. So actually, let me take it one step back too. Is that first, when you're installing V2, all your V1 workloads should work as they do today, with the caveat of these 4 breaking changes. I think we've been over it before, but it's worth reiterating again, is that you know, classic native passion transforms inside of composition's gone. You know, you're expected to use a function pipeline now. That is a breaking change for V2. If you're using the ancient controller config type, you're expected to migrate to a deployment runtime config instead. There is automated migration for both of these things. There's the Crossplane tool. We'll do a Crossplane convert or something like that, I think. We'll convert your existing compositions over to a function pipeline-based thing and convert controller configs over to deployment runtime configs. So that's fairly well handled. And then if for folks that are using the long alpha feature for external secret stores, that has been removed. So that is a blocker for folks if you're currently using that to migrate, to upgrade to V2. It has been dropped. And then default registries, that is no longer a thing because of all the confusion it's caused over the years. So packages, when you're installing them, providers, functions, configurations, et cetera, you need to explicitly define what registry it's coming from. There will be no assumptions about where it's coming from. So that's those 4 breaking changes in V2. And then if you're not affected by any of that stuff, then you can upgrade and everything works as it was on V1. And then Christian, back to your question, with the initial release here, we want to have some guidance and documentation about how you can start moving, your existing cluster scoped managed resources over to namespace ones. And then we want to follow up with automation and tooling. There will not be automation and tooling that are included in the V2 initial release, but that will be something that we need to follow up on. So mostly we're expecting like more new scenarios for folks that, for creating new resources, new compositions to start using namespace stuff. And then as the automated migration tooling comes in over time, then that will become easier to take existing workloads and move them over. But we should at least have some guidance and some docs though.
Okay, and if I'm not mistaken, basically the concept of claims does not exist anymore, right? In V2?
It does exist for legacy composite resources. So if you have a claim, it's still we haven't removed that completely. It still works. But if you start creating namespace composite resources, they don't have claims associated with them.
Okay,
so
perfect.
We didn't break you there.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yep, right on, man. And I've told you this before, Christian, but your voice sounds exactly like one of my good friends from Belgium. So every time you start talking, I'm like, Nico? But it's it's not Nico, it's Christian. I'm not disappointed though. I'm not disappointed. Okay, sweet. So we've got some cool stuff that community members are showing off today. So let's keep moving along. If there's nothing else for V2, I think I saw stuff. Sorry, I saw stuff showing up in the chat. Let me check that too. Oh yeah, so Joe, you're asking about what support in terms of V2 is needed in providers and functions. And then nothing's like it is. So Crossplane enables namespace resources, which is really exciting and it has a lot of benefits to it. But a provider that isn't explicitly updated to provide namespace resources as well should still continue working though. And on a V2 cluster, because you can still do cluster scope stuff. So existing providers and whatnot don't have to get upgraded. It'll just be nicer when they do, so that they provide namespace resources and you can start using all that functionality in Crossplane V2. And yes, there were changes to some of the function protobuf stuff, but it's my understanding, and Scott, back me up on this if you recall better than I do. I don't think any of those changes were breaking. I believe that all of the function protobuf stuff is backwards compatible.
That's right.
Yes, I got one. Thank you, Scott.
If you want to use that, the only gotcha is that the function has to have it has to have the capability of operation inside of it in its metadata
to do operation stuff.
Yeah. So the use of capabilities is new but not breaking. But if you want to go kick those tires and it doesn't work, it's probably because you forgot to include the fact that it can do operation.
That's a very good point. Yep. You don't need to do anything for just regular composition, though. That will continue working.
Yeah, it defaults to things that probably.
Yeah.
If there's no capabilities, it thinks it assumes that you're writing for compositions.
Yep. And then Joe, some clarifications. Can someone migrate their compositions without upgrading providers and functions? That is, and like, yeah, yes, in a sense that they can start using V2. I believe that you can start using V2 XRDs and XRs and whatnot. But if the provider doesn't offer namespaced resources, then you can't compose namespaced resources because they don't exist. So they think everything is still compatible here, but if it's missing namespace stuff like resources, you can't do namespace stuff because you don't have
So
it.
you might be forced to not use namespaces if the provider hasn't been upgraded in some cases.
Right. Exactly, Joe. Yep, because
Right.
it won't have namespace resources. Exactly. We're updating like the big three providers, and I think a couple more actually too. But like provider GCP, AWS, Azure, and those type to be namespace resource offering. And then that leads us into the next question from Christian about oh wait, sorry, no, but from Scott. If there will be a guide for updating object-based providers for V2 capabilities. And I think we need to, yes, Scott. I have not seen one being written yet because we've been focusing on updating the massive 1,000 resource, the 1,000 resources, AWS and Azure and GCP ones. And I think we've got all the patterns down there. And I think that the community providers tend to be much, much smaller. Without thousands, multiple hundreds of resources. So I think it will be easier to migrate those and add that capability, but there will be some tasks that need to be done. And I think we do need to have a guide for it, but I have not seen one yet.
Yeah, we'll get there. It's not that hard. There are some very easy tools you can add to your providers and it'll just work.
Okay, lots of good questions here, guys. Let's see. So the next one I think was from Christian Franco. Do you have to move existing V1 composite resources to V2 in order to provision arbitrary Kubernetes resources? And I think that's a yes, right? The legacy V1 composite resources make expectations or have expectations about composing cluster scoped managed resources, and only V2 composite resources can do arbitrary willy-nilly namespace stuff. And then Kevin, you're asking about if XRDs will be namespaced too. And so if I understand it correctly, like the definition for a composite resource, so a composite resource definition, that is a cluster scoped object itself, but it can be used to define namespaced composite resources or cluster composite resources. But the XRD itself, I think, is cluster scoped. Sweet. Okay, that's all the questions in the chat there. That was fantastic. That was a lightning round of reviewing through all the V2 changes. So that was really fun, actually. So let's move on then. Oh God, we're already 30 minutes through. Okay, yep. Let's move on to get to other folks talking and showing off cool stuff. So all right, quick note for everybody is that as you may have been following along with our graduation journey, because it's been a long one. We started in February of last year, so it's been like a year and a half. We have just 2 days ago opened up a new graduation application. Our last attempt, we got feedback during due diligence for a couple things that the technical oversight committee wants to see done differently with the project. We took that feedback to heart and we made a number of very important changes over the last 5 months for the project that I think you all have heard about before. But they are all summarized here in this new application issue if you want to read more about them. But basically, we think we're ready again for going through our graduation efforts. So if folks want to go check out this issue, read about all the updates, read about why we think we're ready for graduation, and then support it as well by adding reactions like thumbs up and hearts and stuff like that to the issue. No comments on it are necessary, but just reactions to it, that would be super helpful if folks want to do that. Okay, sweet. So we got 30 minutes left, back half of the meeting here. And I know Kevin and Hannes and Daniel need at least 20 minutes there. So Joe, if you want to take like the next 10 minutes or so to talk about your efforts around dev containers recently, let me stop sharing. And so maybe you can start. Do you have permissions to share, Joe? Does that look like you can do that?
Looks like I can. I'll try to do that.
Awesome.
Here looks like what I want to do. this one. Right, looks like I'm sharing a screen right now, which looks like a GitHub repo with a README.
On my side, Joe, it says that Joe has started screen sharing, but I don't see it myself yet.
Let's see, it says you are
there it is.
sharing.
Now I see the GitHub repo. Yeah, I see it
Okay,
now. I see
cool.
it.
So things are gonna be slow. Zoom quit unexpectedly, it says. Anyway, so is everybody following me still?
Yeah, I still hear you. That's interesting. Of Zoom quit unexpectedly. I still see your face and hear you.
Yeah, okay. So you can, wow. Oh, well, I might have to just talk through this. I was wondering how this was gonna, I mean, generally, I'm using Zoom on a new computer, so things worked really well up to this point, and then looks like there might be some issues here. So let's see. So you're able to, you can hear me, right?
Yeah, I can hear you, and I see the Crossplane feature for dev containers
Okay.
screen as well.
Interesting. Well, I'm just gonna say, let's just go as far as I can. And with this, I posted this link to these notes in the chat, right? So this is basically the README on my Playground repo. And what I did was create, the gist of this is that I created a Crossplane feature for dev containers. That specifically, it's a Crossplane CLI feature for dev containers. And so that means, so dev containers is the standard created by, kind of go through a little bit of background of dev containers. It's a standard created by GitHub. It's what Codespaces uses. It's if you install an extension in VS Code, then VS Code can open your repo in an external, in a remote container. And VS Code uses it. Other tools use it, like DevPod by the makers of vCluster from Loft Labs or whatever. Then to learn all about dev containers, you can click on the containers.dev link, and that's the hub site. And there is the specification, list supporting tools. It has a long list of features provided by the community. It has templates which people use to, if you're building your own dev container, you can start with a template and fill that out from there. In Codespaces, that it kind of just works except for maybe some edge restrictions. If you're running in VS Code and you want to use a dev container, you want to open your folder in a dev container, then you need to have a Docker CLI running, which doesn't necessarily, it could mean Docker Desktop, it could mean Rancher Desktop, it could mean Podman, it could mean Kalima, anything. And that Docker CLI could be connecting to a remote Docker or a local Docker, but that's the restriction if you're doing it locally. You need to have some Docker CLI in your path. Are you following along so far?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So then what I found the dev containers are great for onboarding new developers and kind of web visitors. You might navigate to someone's Crossplane repo and they have a README and says you can do this and that. And it's nice to be able to open it up in Codespaces and run and do the examples. It's great for submitting PRs. And so when I started to kind of dive into Crossplane a little bit, and I watched the composition function step-by-step presentation. I watched the composition testing presentation from 2024. I was looking at function KCL, and then I was trying to run some of the examples and on Windows, and that was a little challenging. And I realized though, hey, I should, given the tooling now that's kind of centralized, where there's so much, let's just say there's so much you can do with the Crossplane CLI now, that I could probably just make a feature for dev containers, and then it would be really easy to go and add the feature to your repo and provide a dev container for your repo. So the first thing, I think I have a PR that adds a dev container to, let me back up a second. So first I wrote a feature, which is if you click on the first link, which is my Crossplane feature, that's what a feature is. It's not very much. You start with a bootstrap repo that dev container provides, and which gives you some testing framework for it. And then you just define, you define it basically and publish it. And then, so given that feature, then I was able to go over to the, to the function KCL repo, add my .dev container to that, bring it up in code spaces, run all the examples, create a PR, submit the PR, do everything pretty much in my browser without installing anything myself. I'm afraid to click on one of these links. Maybe I'll click on it and see, but it seems like Codespaces keeps, Zoom keeps quitting every time I do anything. But if I'll click on my PRs, for example, let's see. Oh, by the way, if you back over here to the examples, that you'll find dev containers scattered around pretty prominently. That I'm not sure what percentage of repositories have them, but if you just clicking around in CNCF projects, Linkerd has one, Argo Workflows has one, Dapper has one. A lot of people have them, and that means that the advantage that for just newbies and novices is that they can go to the repo, check it out, open it up in a dev container. They're going to get the set of tools that they're meant to have in a, with a running version, that they don't have to think about it. If I click on, so after I made my Crossplane feature, I submitted some PRs using that to help me. In some of these cases, this is a list of my PRs recently. I found it, like 6 of them. In some of these cases, I'm saying, hey, here's a dev container you can add. In some of these, I just made a PR to fix something, but locally, I used a dev container to set up my environment quickly. And this looks like this link looks like things are not breaking right now. Oops, I shouldn't have said that. But my Crossplane feature looks like this. When you add it to your dev container, you just add it like this. You can put a line in like this, which would give you the default stable version, or you can specify version channel and you'll get, what you want.
Sorry, Joe, I think
add-
your screen freeze.
Oh,
we can see, which you can just see the README MD.
Okay, what can you see now?
It's the README MD.
Oh, okay. Well, let me just, I'll slow down. So I'm back to the README again.
I think maybe you're just only sharing that window. So maybe make sure it opens in the same window.
Oh, interesting. I'm thinking, I think well, anyway, let's just, I'm almost done. So, you're saying that if I click on this, it's going to be in the same window. Well, let's just I'll go to, let me click on, let's see if you follow any of this. Do you see this?
It seems like the
Just
tabs
get up.
don't change at all. Yeah, it's just like the README
Oh,
tab
I'm
is
just
the
sharing
only
that
one
tab.
that's-
Okay. But then I should be able to go to, that would be my problem. Let's see here. But if I click on this, I'm in the same
Nothing
tab.
is
I just
changing.
changed it. Can you see
Nothing is
that?
changing.
No.
Okay. Yeah, so here's my PR to add a dev container to this upbound composition testing. And so what I did was basically, you can look at the PR, but basically I just add this one file, dev container.json, and oops. And and so basically that one file is just, you just start with, it's just a JSON file, and you start with a base image. In this case, I'm using TypeScript base image, which is provided. from Microsoft. I add my Docker and Docker feature, which gives me the Docker runtime I need, and then I add Crossplane. And then
Yeah, and Joe,
now if
let me go ahead and share that real quick because it's still
Okay.
just the playground README. So let me go ahead and share my screen and just show so you can show
Yeah.
people quickly what you're talking about there,
Yeah,
and then we'll
That's
wrap it
good.
up and move on to
Good. Yeah, thanks.
the next
All
one.
right.
So, yeah, I think this is the PR you're talking about, right?
Yeah. So that's what adding a dev container means, is you're adding this .json file and it needs a base image. It needs a list of features. In this case, just to get Crossplane running, just enough to run through all the examples in this repo. Actually, all you need to do is add this .dev container file. Then you open it up in code spaces or open it up in VS Code. And you can open a terminal, you can run Crossplane, you can Crossplane render, Crossplane validate, Crossplane, you can build packages, etc. So that's the point.
Cool. Yeah, and I think that's really cool, Joe. Thanks for showing it off today. And then like, the one question I had though is that do you feel like this is more useful for new folks coming in that like want to try out Crossplane and you know remove like lower the barrier to entry for them to not have to set up an environment and do all that stuff, or is it more useful for folks like developing with Crossplane and to get an environment set up that way?
Yeah, I think it actually has both uses. I think it's very nice. I have in my own playground, which there's a link in the README. What I'm doing with Crossplane probably isn't that interesting to you because I'm just starting, but I have two dev containers. One is just gives me the CLI for which uses minimum resources. The other dev container gives me a kind cluster and Argo CD, installs Crossplane in the cluster. I have K9s running, and so I can do full development in code spaces. And I think that if people start to look at that a little bit, they'll find that that's actually a really nice way to go. And they would want to build that dev container out with, kind of their own custom. That dev container is going to look rather different depending on what people do and how they work. Some people might use Scaffold, some people might use Tilt or Ren, Air, all these different tools. So it kind of depends on what they want to use.
Yep. Cool. Right on. Awesome, Joe. Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that off. I think
and my one question I wanted to find out, one thing is so if you look in the containers.dev, there's a long list of features provided by people. I think it looks better if the features are provided by kind of an official looking place. And I think it would be fairly easy for Crossplane contrib to provide the feature, and I'd be happy to contribute that. That's the idea, is just to try to contribute it. Otherwise, I can anyone can publish a feature, and I can publish mine, and that'll
definitely the officialness of it definitely does help with adoption and people trusting and stuff like that. Yeah, so let's follow up on that then, Joe, so we can talk about kind of like process and stuff for that. And yeah, awesome. Thanks a lot for showing it off again today. Cool. All right. So a little bit less than 20 minutes left, but we'll hurry along here. So Daniel, Kevin, Hannes, whoever of you wants to share your screen and get it kicked off, let me stop being share. Okay.
Yes.
Yep. Whichever one of y'all wants to take it.
I'm gonna kick off. So hopefully you can see the presentation.
Yep.
Yeah. Thanks for having us. We are. Wait a second. I got here. So who we are? It's Hannes Ludloff. He is working like me at CGI.
Hi.
We're working on the project for DB Infogo, which is a part of Deutsche Bahn, with the biggest railway company, or rail company in Germany. Yeah, he's our tech lead in the project, and I'm just a peasant dev. Yeah. Yep. So, what are we gonna do? Or what we did? So we created two frameworks over the last year. I think April last year we started with it, using in the project Crossplane since I think 2021. So kind of early adopters, I think. And we created two frameworks. One is for unit testing. One is for end-to-end testing. especially in function environments, which came up in the last years. There are a lot of contributors to these frameworks listed here next to Hannes and me. So this was a project, or is still a project, and with a lot of people working on it. And so, yeah. So why did we do it? We started, as I said, in 2024 with those frameworks, and we published them open source in May, I think. And yeah, so we have a function which wraps around 87 different other functions, like we call it subroutines, in one function server with around 60,000 lines of code. And those are without the API definitions. And yeah, so we test every subroutine, every 87 subroutines with different YAML inputs, with environment configs. We have composites as arguments. We test for different composed resources, status fields, and so on. So we test our complete rendering system with the need of more fail-safeness and the bigger getting complexity. We thought that it would be a nice thing to have to test everything automatically. Our biggest composition, for example, is it creates 180 managed resources across 2 EKS clusters. So we mainly work on AWS. Our end-to-end tests are about 20 different AWS services with over 50 test cases. So how are we gonna do it is presented by Hannes.
Yes, thank you very much. I will check if I can share my screen as well and take over. Oh, I haven't shared my screen before on this MacBook. Give me a second, please. I need to allow Chrome.
And so far, Kevin, I definitely like the scale you're kind of talking about there. You know, with like how much you've invested in functions and how much they're doing, how many MRs they're creating, and all that sort of stuff. That's all great to see so far.
Yeah, thanks. Like our main contributor, Max, left the project in the beginning of the year. He is the main maintainer of provider AWS and Crossplane concept, or one of the maintainers. Yeah, so we are eagerly working on improving everything from our wrapping of the function SDK, because we have to reuse so many things and want to streamline as much as possible. Okay, Hannes, I think left.
Yeah, it should be right back on in soon with new permissions, I think.
Maybe
him to share.
Do you still see my screen? Oh, no, I think
now you
see your face.
Now you should
now
see.
You see mine. All
Great.
right.
Okay,
all right.
Perfect.
I'm sorry, I just had to restart Chrome to give it permissions to share my screen. So thank you for the introduction, Kevin. I'm going to go ahead and show you a few small demos of the 2 frameworks that Kevin just explained. And since Kevin told you about the proportions of our test suites, I think I'm going to start with the Crossplane function test framework. So for the unit tests, because that is the one that does a lot more heavy lifting than the other one. To start us off, I think most of you have written a Go composition function, or if you ever have written a Go composition function, you have seen this page of documentation. And I just took the function that is in this example here, and I'm going to use it for my demo. So I basically took the code that is here, put it into my editor, and we have it under unit test function. And this is basically also, please tell me, is the code large enough? Can you read it well?
It looks okay for me, Hannes.
Perfectly fine, yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. So this is exactly the function that you have seen on the documentation page. It basically composes a list of S3 buckets. It expects as input a bucket with a list of names and a region, and it creates one bucket for each of those. And the test case, I'm not going to go into the details. I'm just going to show you the test case that tests this and show you the level of abstraction that our test framework provides. This is the entire test file, and we have two test cases here. We have one test to create one of these compositions, and we have one to update it. And I'm going to go over what the create looks like. So first of all, we need a logger to get output from our test. And then the actual test case is very small from the actual code. It says we want to test a function, and f is the function that we have defined in the other file. So the function that composes the S3 buckets. And we pass it a few parameters. We tell it that it observes this composite YAML. And I'm going to show you that in a minute. And it expects these desired resources. And that is all of it. It is very declarative. It is very easy to read top to bottom. You just have to then go into the individual YAML files and look at them. So our function gets basically as input an observed composite, a composite that exists in the cluster. And we are gonna take a look at this YAML. It is just an embedded YAML file. So it is just a slice of bytes here. And this YAML file is what the function expects. It is an X bucket with the name test bucket. It has a region and it has a few names. And what our function does is, as I said, it goes over this list of names and creates one managed resource S3 bucket for each of those. And in our test, so we want to check that the desired resources YAML, we will look at that, contains two buckets, S3 AWS Upbound.io buckets. Their resource names are also determined by the function, and they each have a region set and the external name as defined in the list. So if we go back to the observed composite, so the input to our function, we have the names foo and bar here for the individual buckets. And the desired resources that are the result of the function are one bucket called foo and one bucket called bar. And to run this unit test, I'm going to go into my command line and I'm going to run go test unit. And we don't get a lot of output because everything is fine. If I were to change something around in here, let's say I say the expected desired composed resource has the region EU Central 2, then we will get an error in our test. And actually both test cases, you just saw we have a test create and a test update case. They both will fail. And it will tell me we had an error in the desired resources. The wanted lines are marked with minuses and the got ones are marked with pluses. And if we go down here, we see in the resource X buckets foo, the spec should change. We expected the region to be EU Central 2, which is what we said in our test should be desired, but the function gave us EU Central 1. So this approach makes the actual test code very clean, very easy to read through, and you can create basically one YAML for each test case. It is also possible, and this is a pretty minimal example, it is also possible to add several overlays here or patches. We have, let's see if my autocomplete works. We have observed composite YAML, which I already showed you, which is basically the input for the function. We can add context values, we can add environments, we can add multiple environments, different environments. We can, and that is what I'm going to show you with the test update, we can have observed resources that exist prior to the function running. So most of the time when a function reconciles a composite, there are already composed resources which may need to be updated. So we can also test for this. This is a second input to the function, and we tell it before this function runs, there are already observed resources. And they vary slightly from the expected output. And the result is, again, the same desired resources as before. So if we look at these observed resources, just another YAML file, it looks almost the same as the desired ones. We just see here the region is set to garbage. Some previous reconcile loop of the function wrote garbage into here, and the next run of the function should replace these with the desired region. And the desired YAML here is the same as in the first, because the function is idempotent, so same input, same output, even if there are the observed resources. This is obviously a very
Hannes,
small.
wanna-
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Oh, sorry to interrupt. I apologize for that.
No worries, no
But what,
worries.
like, the quick comment on what I'm seeing here is like the test case, each test case itself is super clean and streamlined, because you've got like a sort of like a pattern, like a variadic options pattern there, where you can say, hey, just run that. I want to test some things, and here's some of the resources that are coming along. So the test cases themselves are just very minimal, very streamlined, very, very clean.
Yes.
It's super interesting to see the functionality that you still get with very minimal test cases.
Yes, yes.
That's cool.
One thing you do have to look out for when using this pattern is that the YAML files can get quite large and quite messy if you are not careful. In this case, to just show you the folder structure, we have in the unit folder the function go and the function test go that I already showed you, and we usually put all of our test data YAML into a test data folder. It is probably recommendable to have a set of YAML files for each test, so you have clearly defined separate test cases. Otherwise, it can get quite complicated fast because you have a lot of YAML files. And that is basically it for the unit testing framework. There are a few more functions here to add more complexity and patches and overlays, but I'm gonna skip over them. They are detailed in the actual GitHub repo to save the time to show you the end-to-end test framework. Or are there any more questions regarding the unit testing framework? I can't see the chat at the moment, so you'll have to help me out.
Yeah, one of the first questions in the chat was about the end-to-end framework. So we'll go into that soon. Probably will be helpful for that. But then there's a couple questions about like function stability. Like, does it keep the results if passed the final desired back as inputs to function?
No, we don't have the possibility to call multiple functions. So at least not in this case at the moment.
Yeah. It is one function call per iteration, yes, per test case.
Pretty self-contained in this case.
What we are planning to do in the future, because many of our functions are structured in a way that they wait for a managed resource to become ready and then build upon its return values. So we basically have multi-step functions. We are probably going to, next year at the earliest, build some kind of flow management part into this so that we can test these multi-step functions. Currently, we only test one set of inputs to one set of outputs, but going through multiple iterations of running a function is something we want to do in the future to make our tests more streamlined.
Okay, 3 more minutes for the end-to-end test.
Oh shit! All right, sorry. Then I will go into
sorry, Hannes, a quick note on the time check. So I normally it's perfectly fine to go over, and folks that can stay can continue participating and listening and sticking around for it. I myself today have a super hard stop at the top of the hour where I'm meeting with a lawyer, so I cannot miss that one. Unfortunately, don't want to be there, but I am going. But so I will make someone else the host though, and so you can feel free to continue past the top of the hour to finish.
All right. I should have put up a clock to watch the time. All right, then I'm going to dive into the end-to-end framework. We have, again, taken from the docs, from the examples for compositions, there is a pretty small and simple composition, a old native fetch and transform that just creates an S3 bucket. Again, it is almost the same as the one I showed you before in the unit testing framework, except it just creates one simple S3 bucket and does not take any input at all. It's the most basic composition you could have. It just takes in an X bucket that has no spec, and it puts out a managed resource bucket that is just entirely defined in here. And the only reason we're doing that is to leave complexity low, to have a very simple test case here. So the end-to-end tests need to have a bit of setup, which I am gonna gloss over because it is basically just setting up your Kube client and, in our case, an AWS client. This part is not important. Important is the actual test case, which begins It is based on the Kubernetes end-to-end framework, so you might recognize the structure. We use a test environment and we tell it we want to create test features. And after we defined the features, or this is a defining of the feature, and this is the running of the feature. You might be familiar with this. These features take the form of setting up by applying objects. These E2E features and the Crossplane features imports are from our framework. Setting up by applying objects. In our case, this is this bucket claim up here, which, as I said, doesn't have any spec. It is just a bucket composite resource. And then we have multiple assess steps. And the first assess step is to wait for this claim to become ready. So we have this wait for claim ready function here, which takes again the claim and a timeout. And after this assesses through, we can be assured that the claim is ready and synced, the other way around, synced and ready. And then after the claim is ready, so the S3 bucket should have been provisioned in AWS. In the meantime, we can assess whatever we want about this S3 bucket. And in this test case, we do a bit of AWS stuff. We create a bucket. We have here the bucket name from the composition, and we put an object in. I'm not going to go through this. This is how you use AWS. We're going to put an object in. We're going to get the object back. We're going to see that the content of the object is what we expect. And afterwards, we have another assess step that deletes the claim using also one of the functions from our framework, which is just delete claim. And it also, again, takes the claim. So this part in the middle is where you do your actual heavy lifting logic and check whether your composition did the thing you wanted it to do. And the abstraction that our framework provides is applying objects, waiting for the status of, and waiting for the status. And there's some more, but this is the simple test case. And to show you how that runs, would be go test E2E bucket. And this one takes a bit longer, which is bad because I'm already over time. Because it is actually going to go to AWS, create a provision an S3 bucket, and then do things with it. So question is, how many people are staying over time? How fast should I keep going?
Keep going, right?
All right. The other thing I have to show you is a bit more of the features of the framework, which is provisioning an EKS cluster. But don't worry, the EKS cluster is already provisioned, so we don't have to wait half an hour for it to come up. We can, the next case is supposed to show you how to create a kube client for a EKS cluster and then run a few checks against it. So this should have told me a few more things. So I forgot to put the verbose flag, which is necessary for the individual steps. And now we see the individual assess steps. So the setup is not shown here. It's basically the first one. Then await claim is our second assess here. That's the one that usually takes the longest to wait for the claim to be synced and ready. And here we have some logging. It has successfully got the object and it is deleting it again. And we are done. And with that, I am gonna switch to the cluster example. Again, some test setup, which is not that important, setting up a kube client. Then in this case, we are going to create an EKS cluster using a control plane. That is a proprietary construct from us. I'm not going to go too much into detail on how it works. Be assured it just puts up an EKS cluster. It puts up a Kubernetes cluster. That's all that really matters. And after that cluster has been provisioned, we want to create a namespace, we want to create a deployment, and we want to check that the deployment has started. So here are the claims or the Kubernetes object manifests for that. A simple namespace called demo namespace and a simple deployment that will be deployed into this namespace and just open up an Nginx demo. Nothing fancy. And the actual test code begins with an assessment that applies the control plane claim. In this case, it's not using a setup because we need some more code. We need to set the namespace on the cluster claim and apply it. Those are some implementation details. And here we have some features that allow us to ignore the ready and synced state of individual managed resources in a composition. This is because some of them won't get ready in our development environment. So that is something you can do and something you can ignore here. Then afterwards, the important point that I want to show you here is how to connect to the created cluster. So we have this API cluster in which Crossplane runs, from which we deploy another Kubernetes cluster, and then we want to run tests against that Kubernetes cluster. So use the Crossplane client, which is coming from our framework, and tell it, build me a new client from composed connection details. So from the connection details within a composed resource. This needs the claim, it needs the name of the managed resource within the claim, and some more information about the claim and the composite to know where it can get the connection details from. And afterwards, we have a kube client that connects to the control plane. And then we can use some more features of our testing framework to apply objects with said client. So apply object, that is the namespace that we've defined before, this one here. And this will return after applying the namespace. Since namespaces are applied instantaneously, we don't need to wait for them. So the next step can be to create a deployment. This looks identical to before. You could move this out into a separate function. And again, apply object with client deployment. And then one of the more interesting parts from our framework is this function here, or these two functions. We have another assess step that does a wait for. So basically, it runs this function on repeat until it says it is done, and until it says its condition is fulfilled. And the condition here is also one we provide, is deployment available, and it gets the kube client to the Kubernetes cluster in which the deployment resides, and the name of the deployment and the namespace. And this assessment step will repeat and wait until this condition is met, or at the most, I think 1 minute is the maximum time here, and you can provide some other parameters regarding the timing options. And since this is the thing that we actually want to test, the next step would be to delete the deployment, delete the namespace, and then last step, delete the cluster, which I didn't do here to speed up the next run. And here we also, here we do not have an abstraction, we just get the kube client and call delete on the individual resources. And I'm going to show you that to finish it off. And this should go rather quickly since the cluster already exists. There are some audit warnings from our cluster, which are not that important. The control plane claim, so the cluster claim has been applied, has been awaited, a namespace was created, a deployment was created, and now we are waiting for it. And it was successful. And I am 6 minutes over time. We can go ahead and get some questions in. I'm sorry that was a bit hasty at the end. But the repos and the readmes in the repos also explain this, I think, rather well and show you how to use it yourself.
I think you were on time and I went too long.
Might as well be.
Of course, feel free to approach Hannes and me in the Slack or via the GitHub repos, whatever. Yeah, if there are no further questions. Thanks also to Daniel, which is here in the call, which is our product owner and head of the project. So thanks for you to employ us in this project and give us the opportunity to work on this without all the political hassle. The company political hassle. And yeah, thanks for having us. Have a good night, at least here. It's 8 p.m.
Thank you very much for the demo.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Right. Bye-bye.
Bye.